The blizzard hit Frozen Creek without warning, transforming the small frontier town into a white hell within hours. Jack Turner had seen bad winters in his 40 years, but this storm felt different, meaner, like nature itself had decided to test who deserved to survive. He'd taken shelter in the stable behind the saloon, checking on his horse when he heard it. A sound so faint he almost missed it beneath the howling wind. A cough, small, desperate, coming from the corner where old hay bales were stacked. Jack moved quietly, hand near his gun, out of habit. You never knew what you'd find in dark corners. Could be a wounded animal, could be worse. But when he pulled aside a hay bale, he found something that made his chest tighten. A boy, maybe 10 years old, curled into himself like a dying ember trying to hold on to warmth. His clothes were threadbare, his lips blue, his small body shaking so hard Jack could hear his teeth chattering. The kid's eyes opened, fever bright and defiant. "Get away from me," the boy rasped. His voice was weak, but the words carried force. "I don't need nothing from nobody." Jack knelt slowly, keeping his distance. "Son, you're half frozen. When'd you last eat? Don't call me son. And I ate yesterday. I'm fine." It was obviously a lie. The kid was skin and bones, his cheeks hollow, his eyes sunken. Jack had seen enough starving people to recognize the signs. This boy wasn't just hungry. He was dying slowly, one cold night at a time. "What's your name?" The boy's jaw set stubbornly. "None of your business." "Fair enough. I'm Jack, and I'm not leaving you here to freeze. Storm's getting worse. You'll be dead by morning if you stay. Then I'll be dead." The boy tried to sound tough, but another violent shiver betrayed him. Better than owing someone. Jack felt something crack in his chest. He recognized that fierce independence, that terror of being beholden. He'd worn the same armor once after his own parents died and left him alone in an indifferent world. Pride was sometimes all an orphan had. "Listen," Jack said carefully, "I got a room at the boarding house, got a fire going, got food. I'm offering to share, no strings. You don't owe me nothing. You're just a person who needs help, and I'm a person who can give it. Simple as that." "Nothing simple," the boy shot back. "Everything has a price. Everyone wants something. I learned that the hard way." "What happened to you, kid?" The boy's eyes went distant. "My folks died of cholera last spring. Town took me in, passed me around like a bad penny. Each family said they'd care for me, but really they just wanted free labor. Work me till I dropped, feed me scraps, then complain I wasn't grateful enough. So I ran. Been on my own 3 months now. And I'm doing fine." "You're dying," Jack said bluntly. "Maybe not today, but soon. This storm will kill you if hunger doesn't." "That's not fine. That's just slow suicide with extra steps." The boy's defiance wavered. A tear escaped, freezing on his cheek. "Why do you care? You don't know me." "Because I was you once," Jack admitted. 12 years old, parents dead, nobody wanted me except to exploit me. I survived by being hard, by trusting nobody, by taking care of myself. And you know what? It nearly destroyed me, made me into something mean and broken. Took me years to learn that accepting help isn't weakness. It's survival." The boy studied him with ancient eyes. "What's your angle? What do you want from me? Honestly, nothing. I got more than I need and you got nothing. Seems wasteful not to balance that out." Jack stood, extending his hand. "Come on. Let me get you warm and fed. Then if you want to leave, leave. But at least you'll have a fighting chance." For a long moment, the boy didn't move. Pride warred with desperation on his thin face. Finally, another violent shiver made the decision for him. He reached out and took Jack's hand. The kid could barely walk. Jack ended up carrying him through the blizzard to the boarding house, the boy's small body weighing almost nothing. Inside, Jack's room was warm from the fireplace. He set the kid in a chair near the flames and wrapped him in blankets. "What's your name?" Jack asked again, gentler this time. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Daniel." "Danny." "All right, Danny, let's get some food in you. But slow. Your stomach's probably shrunk. Too much too fast will make you sick." He heated soup on the fire, simple beef broth with vegetables. Danny's eyes tracked every movement with the intensity of someone who'd gone too long without. When Jack handed him the bowl, the boy's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped it. "Easy," Jack steadied the bowl. "Small sips." Danny obeyed, and with the first taste, tears started flowing. He tried to hide them, turning away, but his thin shoulders shook with more than cold. Jack pretended not to notice, giving the kid dignity in his breakdown. After Danny finished the soup and stopped shaking, Jack asked carefully, "Those families that took you in, they hurt you?" Danny nodded once, sharp, not always with fists, mostly with words. "With making me feel like I was a burden, like I should be grateful for scraps and abuse. One man worked me 16 hours in his fields, barely fed me, then beat me when I collapsed from exhaustion. Said I was lazy, said orphans like me were worthless, unless we earned our keep." Jack felt rage burning in his gut. What was his name? Why? Because maybe someone needs to have a conversation with him about how to treat children. Danny looked up sharply. "You do that? Stand up for me?" "I would," Jack said simply. "Nobody should treat a kid that way. And yeah, before you ask, I'm serious. You want me to pay him a visit? I will." For the first time, something like hope flickered in Danny's eyes. But it died quickly, replaced by familiar wariness. "Then what? You scare him, he gets madder, and I'm still stuck here with no one and nothing. Revenge doesn't solve problems." Smart kid, Jack thought. Too smart. Too aware of how the world worked. No child should have to think that practically about survival. "You're right," Jack admitted. "So let's think practical. Storm will last 2, maybe 3 days. You stay here, eat regular, get your strength back. When the snow clears, we figure out your next move. Maybe I know some folks who'd treat you right. Or maybe you move on to the next town, but at least you'll be healthy enough to have choices. And what do you get out of this?" "Peace of mind," Jack said. "The knowledge I didn't let a kid freeze to death when I could have helped. Is that so hard to believe?" Danny searched his face for lies, for hidden motives. Finally, exhausted and warm for the first time in months, he nodded. "Okay, 3 days, but then I'm gone. I don't stay places long. People always turn mean eventually." "Fair enough," Jack agreed, though he suspected 3 days wouldn't be enough to heal what was broken in this boy. But it was a start. That night, Danny slept in Jack's bed while Jack took the floor. The cowboy lay awake, listening to the storm rage outside and the boy's quiet breathing inside. He thought about the casual cruelty of a world that could break children and call it their own fault. Thought about all the Dannys out there, freezing in stables, starving in alleys, dying slowly while good people looked away. Tomorrow, Jack decided, he'd start figuring out how to help, not just this one boy, but others like him. There had to be a better way than passing orphans around like unwanted property. Had to be people willing to care without exploiting. Outside, the blizzard howled, but inside, warmed by fire and unexpected kindness, a dying boy began to believe that maybe, just maybe, not everyone wanted something in return for basic human decency. It was a fragile hope, but in the frozen darkness of Frozen Creek, fragile hope was better than none at all. Danny woke to the smell of bacon frying and momentarily panicked, disoriented by warmth and comfort. For 3 months, he'd woken to cold, hunger, and the constant awareness that survival meant staying alert. Softness was dangerous. It made you vulnerable. Then he remembered the cowboy, Jack, the blizzard. He sat up cautiously, every muscle aching. The room was small but clean, with morning light filtering through frosted windows. Outside, snow still fell in thick sheets. Jack stood at the small stove, cooking. He glanced over and smiled. Morning. Storm's still going strong. Looks like we're stuck together a while longer. "Hope you like flapjacks?" Danny's stomach growled traitorously. He tried to maintain his defensive posture. "I can leave if I'm a bother." "You're not a bother," Jack said easily, flipping a pancake. "And you'd last about 10 minutes in that storm. Sit. Eat. We'll figure things out when the weather clears." They ate in silence, Danny wolfing down food while trying to appear casual about it. Jack pretended not to notice, keeping conversation light. He talked about his horse, about the town, about nothing important. Slowly, Danny's rigid posture relaxed. After breakfast, Jack pulled out a worn deck of cards. "You know any games?" Danny shrugged. "Some. Folks used to play poker at the saloon where Ma worked before she died. They played simple games for matchsticks." Jack was patient, explaining rules, never making Danny feel stupid for not knowing something. It was such a foreign experience that Danny found himself laughing at one point, then immediately catching himself. "It's okay to laugh," Jack said gently. "Being happy doesn't mean you've forgotten your folks or what you've been through. How do you know what I've been through? Because I see it in your eyes. That look that says you've learned not to trust good things because they always get taken away." Jack set down his cards. "My parents died when I was 12. Typhoid. I went from having a home and family to being nobody's problem overnight. Spent years angry at the world, at God, at every person who looked at me and saw a burden instead of a kid. What changed? Old rancher named Samuel Cross took me in when I was 15. Didn't ask for nothing in return, just gave me work and treated me fair. Taught me that some people are genuinely good. Not many, but enough. And that carrying all that anger was like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die." Danny absorbed this. "Did you trust him, Mr. Cross?" "Not at first," Jack admitted. "Kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to show his true colors. But it never happened. He was just a decent man trying to help a damaged kid. When he died 5 years later, he left me money to buy my own place. Said he'd never had children of his own, and I was the closest he'd come to a son." The story hung in the air between them. Danny wanted desperately to believe such kindness existed, but experience had taught him otherwise. People said nice things, made promises, then revealed their true nature once you were dependent. "I'm not Samuel Cross," Jack said, reading his thoughts. "I can't promise I'm perfect or that I'll never let you down, but I can promise I won't hurt you deliberately, and I won't throw you out when the storm ends. If you want to stay a while, figure things out, you're welcome." "Why?" Danny asked for the 100th time. "Why me? Why help?" Jack considered the question seriously. "Maybe because I see myself in you. Maybe because helping you helps heal something broken in me. Or maybe there's no deep reason. Maybe kindness doesn't need justification. It just needs to be done." The storm raged for 3 days, as Jack predicted. During that time, Danny slowly thawed in more ways than one. They talked about everything and nothing. Jack shared stories of his years as a cowboy, of cattle drives and frontier justice. Danny spoke haltingly about his parents, about the small farm they'd had, about his mother's laugh and his father's strong hands. On the 3rd morning, the storm broke. Sunlight streamed through windows, revealing a world transformed by snow. Danny stood at the window, staring at the brilliant white landscape, and felt something shift inside him. He was stronger now, fed and rested. He could leave like he'd planned, resume his solitary survival. But did he want to? Jack joined him at the window. "Beautiful, isn't it? Makes you forget how deadly it was a few hours ago." "I should go," Danny said without conviction. "You've done enough. Where will you go?" Danny had no answer. He'd been running for so long from town to town, barn to barn, that he'd never considered stopping. "Next town, I guess. Find work. Keep moving." Jack turned to face him. "What if you stayed here in Frozen Creek? I know folks who need help with honest work. The general store could use someone to stock shelves and make deliveries. Pays not much, but it's fair. And you could stay here until you get your own place." Danny's throat tightened. Why would you let me stay? Because you're a good kid who's had rotten luck, because everyone deserves a chance to stop running, and because, honestly, it's nice having company, gets lonely on your own. What if I'm trouble? What if those families were right and I'm just a burden? Jack put a hand on Danny's shoulder. You're 10 years old, and you survived 3 months on your own in one of the hardest winters I've seen. You're not a burden. You're a survivor, and survivors deserve better than scraping by alone. Tears threatened, but Danny blinked them back. I don't know how to trust people anymore. Then learn, Jack said simply, one day at a time. I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. Just trust me enough to try. If it doesn't work out, if you want to leave, you leave. No hard feelings, but give yourself the chance to have a real life instead of just existing. Danny looked out at the snow-covered town. Somewhere down there was potential for a different future, for stability, for belonging. It terrified him more than any blizzard, but Jack had been right about something. Carrying anger and fear everywhere was exhausting. Maybe it was time to try something different. Okay, Danny said quietly. I'll try. But if it goes bad, if people... You'll turn mean, I'm gone. Deal, Jack agreed, extending his hand. They shook, and Danny felt like he was sealing more than just an agreement. He was choosing to hope again. Despite everything that had taught him, hope was dangerous. Over the following weeks, Danny settled into life in Frozen Creek. Jack introduced him to Martha Green, who ran the general store. She was a widow in her 60s with sharp eyes and a kind heart. She took one look at Danny and hired him on the spot. The work was honest and steady. Danny stocked shelves, swept floors, made deliveries around town. Martha paid him fairly and treated him with respect. She never pitied him or made him feel lesser. She simply gave him work and expected him to do it well. Jack helped him open a bank account, teaching him to save money. They found Danny a small room to rent above the store once he'd earned enough. It wasn't much, but it was his. The first. Space that belonged to him alone. Slowly, tentatively, Danny began to build a life. He made a few friends among the other kids in town. He started attending church with Martha, not because he believed, but because the community felt good. He even smiled sometimes without immediately feeling guilty about it. But the old fears didn't disappear. They lurked, waiting for everything to fall apart. Every time Martha praised his work, Danny waited for the criticism that would follow. Every time Jack invited him to dinner, Danny braced for the price that would be extracted. Every kindness felt like a setup for inevitable betrayal. One evening, 6 weeks after the storm, Danny sat with Jack on the boarding house porch. The cowboy was leaving tomorrow for a cattle drive, would be gone 2 months. Danny felt panic rising. What if things change while you're gone? What if Martha decides she doesn't need me? What if people realize I'm not worth the trouble? Jack looked at him seriously. Those things might happen. I can't promise they won't. Life doesn't come with guarantees. But Danny, you've got to stop waiting for the world to prove your worst fears right. Sometimes good things stay good. Sometimes people mean what they say. You're not that starving kid in the stable anymore. You're Daniel Green's assistant, the hardest working kid in Frozen Creek. I'm scared, Danny admitted, of trusting too much, of getting comfortable and then losing it all again. That's natural, but fear can't be your only guide. Jack stood, preparing to head inside. You've survived the worst already. Everything from here is just living, and living means risking pain for the chance at joy. Your parents wouldn't want you to spend your life hiding from happiness because you're afraid it'll end. The words hit Danny like a punch. His parents, they'd loved him fiercely, had worked themselves to the bone to give him a good life. They'd never wanted him to be this scared, this closed off. Maybe Jack was right. Maybe it was time to stop just surviving and start actually living. Before Jack left the next morning, Danny gave him something. A small carved horse, whittled from a piece of wood over many evenings. It was crude, the proportions wrong, but made. With care, so you don't forget me while you're gone, Danny said, trying to sound casual. Jack's eyes shone with emotion. I could never forget you, kid. You saved me as much as I saved you. He tucked the carving carefully into his saddlebag. I'll be back before you know it. You take care of yourself and Martha. And Danny, trust that good things can last. Trust that you deserve them. As Jack rode out of town, Danny stood watching until horse and rider disappeared over the horizon. For the first time in months, he wasn't planning his escape route. He was planning his future. Subscribe to our channel to discover what happens when Jack returns and whether Danny can finally let go of his fears and embrace the family he's found. In the final chapter, past demons return to test everything they've built, and a boy must choose between running from pain or fighting for the life he deserves. Jack had been gone 6 weeks when trouble arrived in Frozen Creek. His name was Silas Cobb, and he was one of the men who'd taken Danny in after his parents died. The one who'd worked him 16 hours a day and beaten him for collapsing from exhaustion. Danny was sweeping the boardwalk outside the general store when he saw Cobb ride into town. His blood turned to ice. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to disappear before Cobb noticed him. But his feet wouldn't move. He stood frozen, broom in hand, as the man who'd tormented him dismounted and tied his horse. Cobb's eyes swept the street and landed on Danny. Recognition flickered, followed by a cruel smile. Well, well, the ungrateful little rat who ran off. Been looking for you, boy. You owe me for all them months of food and shelter. Danny found his voice. I don't owe you nothing. You worked me like a slave and barely fed me. Your property until you're 16, according to territorial law. Orphans go to whoever claims them. I claimed you. That means you're mine until I say otherwise. Cobb stepped closer. Now you're coming. Back with me, and this time I'll make sure you don't run. Martha Green emerged from the store, a shotgun cradled in her arms. The boy's not going anywhere with you, Mr. Cobb. He's got legal employment here and a place to live. You've got no. Blame on him, Cobb sneered. A woman's got no say in legal matters. Boy's coming with me, whether you like it or not. A crowd was gathering now, sensing confrontation. Danny's heart pounded. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading. When his past caught up and destroyed the fragile new life he'd built. He could run now, disappear into the wilderness. But that would mean leaving Martha, leaving everything, or he could fight. Not with fists, he was still too small, but with truth. Tell them, Danny said loudly, his voice shaking but clear. Tell everyone what you did, how you beat me, how you worked me until I collapsed. How you called me worthless and lazy when I was sick with hunger. Cobb's face reddened. You needed discipline. Orphans need hard work to build character. I needed food. Danny shouted. I needed rest. I needed someone to care if I lived or died. You didn't take me in out of kindness. You took me in for free labor, and when I couldn't work anymore, you beat me and called it discipline. The crowd murmured. Danny saw recognition on some faces. They'd heard rumors about Cobb, about how he treated the kids he took in, but rumors were easier to ignore than truth spoken plainly. Sheriff Hayes pushed through the crowd. He was a fair man, known for listening. Before judging, what's going on here? Cobb pointed at Danny. That boy's my legal ward. He ran away and I'm here to reclaim him. Danny stepped forward. I'm not property, and he's not a guardian. He's a slave driver who hides behind the law. Ask anyone who's worked for him. Ask the last 3 kids he took in. Where are they now? All. Ran away or died trying. The sheriff looked at Cobb. That true? You've had multiple orphans run from your care? They were weak, ungrateful children. Cobb spat. I gave them opportunities and they wasted them. Martha spoke up. Sheriff, Danny's been working for me for 6 weeks. Never missed a day, never complained, never caused trouble. He's a good boy who was mistreated. I won't let him be dragged back. To that, the law says orphans go to whoever claims them first, Cobb insisted. I claimed him. That's final. Danny felt panic rising again. The law. Always the law was used to hurt people who couldn't fight back. He looked around at the gathered townspeople, at faces he'd come to know, some sympathetic, some uncertain, some clearly on Cobb's side. Then an unexpected voice spoke up. Danny turned, in shock to see Jack riding into town, trail dust still covering him. He'd returned early. The law also says, Jack called out as he dismounted, that guardians are responsible for the welfare of children in their care, and if it can be proven they're abusive or neglectful, that guardianship can be revoked. Sheriff, I'd like to press charges against Mr. Cobb on Danny's behalf. Child abuse and exploitation. Cobb laughed harshly. You got no standing, Cowboy. You're not kin, not guardian, nothing. Your word means nothing. Maybe not, Jack agreed. But Danny's word means something. And if he's willing to testify about what happened, if there are others who'll corroborate his story, then we got ourselves a legal case. What do you say, Sheriff? You willing to at least investigate before you hand a kid back to someone who might kill him? Sheriff Hayes studied both men, then looked at Danny. Boy, you willing to testify? Tell exactly what happened while you were in Mr. Cobb's care. Danny's hands shook. Testifying meant reliving everything. Meant standing up in public and admitting how weak he'd been, how he'd let himself be abused, but it also meant fighting back. Meant saying no to people who thought they could treat children like animals. Yes, sir, Danny said clearly. I'll testify, and I'll tell the truth, all of it. Over the next 3 hours, Danny told his story to the sheriff, to Jack, to a justice of the peace who happened to be in town. He described the beatings, the starvation, the 16-hour days in the fields. He showed scars on his back from Cobb's belt. He detailed every cruelty with a steady voice, refusing to let shame silence him. Jack produced 2 other former wards of Cobb's who'd also run away. They corroborated Danny's story. One girl, now 14 and working at a ranch 20 miles away, showed scars worse than Danny's. Another boy, barely 12, described watching his younger brother die from neglect in Cobb's care. By evening, the case was clear. Cobb was arrested, charged with child abuse and exploitation. His claim on Danny was formally revoked. The man who'd tormented him was led away in chains, still cursing and threatening. When it was over, Danny collapsed on the steps of the general store, shaking with reaction. Jack sat beside him, saying nothing, just present. Martha brought them, both coffee, and sat on Danny's other side. You did good, kid, Jack said finally. Stood up for yourself. That takes more courage than running. I wanted to run, Danny admitted. Every instinct told me to disappear. But then I thought about what you said, about living instead of just surviving. And I realized running would mean losing everything I've built here, losing you and Martha and the life I'm starting to have. That scared me more than facing Cobb. Good, Martha said firmly, because you're part of this community now. We don't let our own get dragged back into hell without a fight. Danny looked between them. Am I part of the community? Of course you are, Jack said. Have been since you decided to stay. A community isn't just a place, it's people who care about each other, who fight for each other. You're one of us now, Danny, for as long as you want to be. Something broke open in Danny's chest. All the fear and anger and defensive walls he'd built came crashing down. He cried then, deep racking sobs, and Jack pulled him close while Martha held his hand. They sat there as the sun set, 3 people who'd all known loss and found family in unexpected places. In the following weeks, Danny truly began to heal. With Cobb in jail awaiting trial, the threat that had haunted him was gone. He threw himself into work with Martha, saving money and planning for a future that felt increasingly real. Jack stayed in town, taking local jobs instead of long cattle drives, and the 2 of them grew closer. Martha began teaching Danny to read better, to work with numbers beyond basic counting. She talked about him maybe taking over the store someday when he was older. The idea that he could have a real future, a real place, seemed impossible and wonderful at once. Jack taught him other things, how to ride properly, How to shoot, not for violence, but for protection. How to look a man in the eye and stand your ground. But more importantly, he taught Danny that accepting help wasn't weakness and that trust, while risky, was worth the gamble. 6 months after the blizzard, Danny stood in front of the general store, watching the sun rise over Frozen Creek. He was taller now, filling out from regular meals. His eyes had lost some of their haunted quality. He wasn't the dying boy from the stable anymore. He was Daniel, assistant to Martha Green, friend to Jack Turner, member of the community. Jack joined, him coffee in hand, thinking deep thoughts, just thinking how different things are from last winter. How close I came to dying in that stable, but you didn't die. You lived. And look at what you've built. We built, Danny corrected. I couldn't have done this alone. Nobody does anything alone, Jack said. That's the point. We need each other. Strong. Folks help weak folks until the weak folks get strong enough to help someone else. That's how it works. That's how communities survive. Danny smiled. Then I guess someday I'll help some other scared kid. Pay it forward, like you did for me. That's the idea, Jack agreed. Change the world one person at a time. They stood together as the town woke up around them. Shopkeepers opening for business. Families heading to church. The ordinary magic of daily life in a place where people cared about each other. Danny had learned that home wasn't a building or even a town. It was people who saw you and chose to care, who fought for you when you couldn't fight for yourself, who gave you space to heal and time to grow. He'd also learned something else. That pride, while valuable, couldn't keep you warm or fed. That accepting help didn't make you weak. And that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stop running and let yourself be found. The orphan boy who'd said, "I don't need your help," had learned that everyone needs help sometimes. And that offering help, receiving it and passing it on, was what connected humans to each other in a world that could be cold and cruel. Danny would carry his scars forever. The memories of hunger, abuse, and loss wouldn't disappear. But they'd become part of his story instead of the whole story. And his story now included Jack and Martha, and a town that had chosen him as much as he'd chosen it. As they walked back inside for breakfast, Danny realized he'd stopped planning escape routes, stopped waiting for everything to fall apart. He'd learned to trust that good things could last, not forever. Nothing lasted forever, but long enough to matter. And mattering, he'd discovered, was all anyone really needed. To matter to someone. To have people who'd notice if you disappeared, to belong somewhere, even imperfectly. The blizzard had nearly killed him, but it had also led him to salvation. Sometimes, Danny thought, the worst moments created opportunities for the best ones. You just had to survive long enough to see them. He'd survived. And now, finally, he was learning to live. Thank you for joining us on Danny's journey from frozen desperation to warm belonging. If this story of pride, healing, and the transformative power of genuine kindness moved you, subscribe to our channel for more tales from the frontier, where the lost find family and courage takes many forms. Every story we share celebrates the truth that we're stronger together than alone, and that sometimes the help we resist is exactly what saves us. Don't miss our upcoming narratives of redemption, community, and the revolutionary act of caring for those society overlooks.